Hey guys, glad you're here tonight. Let's begin gently. Close your eyes, get cozy, maybe throw on a weighted blanket. Not because it helps with sleep, but because it mimics the crushing pressure of social hierarchy in Han Dynasty China. You open your eyes. The air is thick, humid, and smells faintly of smoke, sweat, and steamed millet. There's no alarm clock, just the sound of a rooster, who's been yelling since before sunrise and clearly has unresolved trauma. You've officially woken up in ancient China, somewhere around 100 BCE. It's the height of the Han Dynasty, a glorious golden age for science, innovation, philosophy, and unfortunately also for dying of diarrhea. Congratulations, you're alive. The bad news. So is everyone else, and they're all counting on you to grow rice. You probably imagined something more elegant. Pagodas, silk robes. Maybe a wise old monk offering you tea under a cherry blossom tree. Nope. You're barefoot, itchy, and have exactly 0 cherry blossoms. Your home is made of packed earth. Your roof leaks. And the closest thing to a silk robe is your neighbor's funeral shroud, which, let's be honest, might be yours by next winter. Let's set the scene. Asterisk, the Han Dynasty is one of the greatest empires in world history. On paper, it's a time of peace and prosperity. In reality, it's a time of forced labor, salt taxes, and mandatory Confucian obedience drills. Society is a pyramid, and guess what? You're not at the top, unless you were miraculously born into the scholar official class, which, statistically, you were not. Then you are the proud owner of a sunburnt neck, a malnourished goat, and generational debt to a landlord who collects grain like it's cryptocurrency. There's no electricity, no weekends, no Netflix to distract you from the crushing monotony. The only thing that streams is your sweat, and even that is taxed indirectly through government grain quotas. Wi-Fi, the only signals you receive are from angry ancestors in your dreams. And they're mostly disappointed, your emperor believes. He is the son of heaven. You, on the other hand, are barely the son of your father, who expects you to plow fields, obey elders, and silently carry the crushing burden of filial piety, while trying not to die from rice fungus. You can't vote, you can't protest, and your biggest freedom is choosing whether to bathe today or wait until someone forces you into the river. But hey, at least you're not a criminal, yet, because in Han China, that's a career path to. So, take one last deep breath. Inhale the incense smoke. Or maybe that's just your neighbor burning dung. Either way, let's begin, because you're about to live a full day in ancient China, and trust me, you'll wish you hadn't. Welcome to history. It's dusty, it's desperate, and you're definitely underdressed. Asterisk, you wake up. Not because you're well rested, but because something just bit your ankle. Again, probably a flea. Possibly your uncle's chicken. Either way, your day has begun, and it already hates you. You're lying on a straw mat that smells like it used to be food for a donkey, and probably was. Your blanket is an old jacket passed down through 3 generations and washed exactly once during a flood. It still hasn't recovered. Your pillow is another jacket, this one rolled up and stuffed with hay. You call it the soft one, even though it's the consistency of a bruised brick. Your home is a masterpiece of early Chinese poverty architecture. A single-room mud brick box with no insulation, one wooden door that doesn't quite shut, and cracks in the wall wide enough for a rat to leave you a note. There are no windows, just one sad hole for ventilation, which mostly lets in mosquitoes, gossip, and the sound of someone else's goat throwing a tantrum. In the summer, room transforms into a steamed rice cooker. Only you're the dumpling. The air is heavy, your sweat refuses to evaporate, and the humidity clings to your body like a desperate loan collector. You roll over and feel the mat squish slightly beneath you. You don't want to know why. In winter, the floor turns to stone. You wrap yourself tighter in your jacket-blanket combo, but the cold seeps in through the walls, the floor, and your ancestral bones. Your breath fogs the air. Your nose goes numb. You consider setting the mat on fire for warmth, but it's the only piece of furniture you own. Plus, you're still lying on it. The family bedroom is also the family living room, kitchen, and chicken coop. You share this one room with your parents, your siblings, possibly an in-law, and one cousin who just never left. Chickens wander freely inside, pecking at your straw mat like it owes them money. Rats scurry across the beams above, dropping mysterious crumbs onto your face during the night. You try not to scream. It'll wake your grandmother. She sleeps 3 feet away, wrapped in a robe that doubles as both her burial shroud and formal occasion, where she snores like a malfunctioning ox cart. Occasionally, she mutters about ghosts. You've learned not to ask questions. There is no privacy. Not for changing clothes. Not for using the chamber pot in the corner. Not for quiet existential breakdowns. Every emotion is shared, usually out loud, and usually before breakfast. If someone cries in the middle of the night, you either pretend to be asleep or cry louder. It's the ancient Chinese version of emotional dominance. Roosters start screaming well before dawn. They live under the same roof, and you suspect they do it out of spite. You don't own an alarm clock. You own livestock with no sense of time or mercy. You hear one stomp across the floor, knocking over the water pot. Again, that's your drinking water. Or was. You sit up slowly. Your back cracks. Your knees creak. You're 15 years old, but feel 70. You rub your eyes, reach for your outer robe, and prepare for another long day of hunger, heat, and humble submission to every person older than you, which, tragically, is most of the village. And this is just the morning. You haven't even stepped outside yet. But don't worry, world out there is somehow worse. Welcome to ancient China. You are awake. Against your will, ***. Let's talk about your family. Not because you want to, but because you have no choice. Much like everything else in your life, you live in a traditional Confucian household, which sounds noble until you realize that Confucian is just ancient Chinese for everyone older than you is right, and you are mostly furniture. The social order is clear and eternal. Emperor, father, grandfather, absolutely everyone else, and you, somewhere between the pigs and the laundry. You reside humbly near the bottom. Your house, which is already one room too small, is home to 3 generations, 12 personalities, and exactly 0 secrets. There's your grandfather, the family patriarch, whose only job now is to sit on the family stool, sigh loudly, and judge everything you do with the expression of someone who smelled something terrible for decades. His favorite child isn't. Your father, it's the horse he used to own during his brief moment of glory before tax collectors took it. Your father is the boss of daily life. He doesn't ask. He commands. He yells. He swears by the ancestors. And his belt is not decorative. He works all day and expects you to work even harder, because while he was walking uphill in the rain barefoot as a child, you've had it easy with your only 5 hours of sleep and survived a mild rice shortage. Your mother does everything and gets credit for nothing. She wakes before dawn to cook, clean, spin, hemp, and tried to convince the youngest child not to eat mud again. She's exhausted, stoic, and one argument away from snapping a broom over your uncle's head. And yes, your uncle lives here too. He has no job, no plans, and a strong opinion about everything. He refers to himself as a philosopher, which in this household means he drinks tea all day and makes useless commentary about your posture. Then there's the siblings. Too many of them, you don't remember everyone's name. One of them cries constantly. Another keeps stealing your rice. The youngest peed on your mat again. You think she's possessed. Nobody believes you. Your family structure is designed around filial piety, or shao, the sacred duty to obey, respect, and serve your elders like they're royalty, and you're a particularly enthusiastic doormat. If you talk back, you're not just rude, you're dishonoring the ancestors. If you suggest something new, you're challenging the Tao. If you accidentally step on your grandfather's shadow, you may need to atone by sweeping the yard for 3 weeks and crying silently in the corner. There is no privacy. The concept of personal space hasn't been invented yet. If you want to change clothes, you turn around and hope no one's looking. They are, always. Your puberty is a shared experience. So is everyone else's. Disagreements are solved with shouting, sighing, or long passive-aggressive silences during meals. Speaking of which, meals are communal. You sit cross-legged on the dirt floor around a low wooden table. Bowls of rice, pickled vegetables, and maybe a boiled root if you're lucky. You eat quickly, quietly, and without eye contact. Your portion depends on your age, gender, and perceived usefulness. Spoiler, you're not that useful. The only thing more shared than the food is the misery. If grandpa has a toothache, everyone hears about it. If your sister burns the kanji, it's a family scandal. If your cousin gets married, every remaining daughter suddenly becomes too old at the age of 14. In the Confucian worldview, family is the foundation of society. But in practice, it's a hyper-sure, multi-generational guilt complex held together by rice, resentment, and ritual. You don't belong to yourself. You belong to the household, which is just a nice way of saying you're replaceable. Welcome to family life in ancient China. Now go scrub the floor before your aunt finds another reason to scold you. Asterisk, asterisk, nature calls, loudly and rudely. You look around your humble, single-room dirt box and remember there is no bathroom, not a separate room, not a wooden stall, not even a curtain. What you have is something far worse, a pit latrine located just outside, and affectionately known as the hole where hope goes to die. It's not glamorous, it's not clean. It's literally a trench in the ground with 2 planks to squat on and a smell so powerful it could defeat a Mongol cavalry charge. The flies are regulars, the stench is biblical, and you're expected to go there multiple times a day without crying or slipping. If you're lucky, there's a roof over it. If you're unlucky, it rains, and now you're squatting over a mudslide of human despair. There's no plumbing. Waste sits in the pit, aging like a cursed wine barrel, until someone has to shovel it out to fertilize the fields. That's right, your food is grown with last month's decisions. And what about toilet paper? Nope, never heard of it. That revolutionary concept hasn't arrived yet. Instead, you get a bamboo stick with a sponge or cloth tied to the end. It's called a chechu, and it's exactly as bad as it sounds. You dip it in water, do your business, rinse it off, and put it back. Why? Because it's reusable and communal. Like a toothbrush, if toothbrushes came from nightmares. Sometimes the sponge is replaced with hemp cloth, a leaf, or whatever sad, semi-absorbent material happens to be lying nearby. Moss, great stale rice husks. Sure, your dignity, long gone. The experience is equal parts yoga, gambling, and trauma. Now, on to bathing. A word that here means trying not to get dysentery while pretending you feel refreshed. If you're wealthy, congratulations, you can visit a public bathhouse. There, you might enjoy warm water, hot tea, and a masseuse named something poetic like cloud fragrance. But you are not wealthy. You are very much a peasant. And your version of a bath is the nearest river, which you share with ducks, laundry, and upstream urination. If you're smart, you bathe upstream. If you're not, and let's be honest, you're not, you go downstream and pretend those suspicious bubbles are just fish. You strip down, scrub with coarse hemp cloth, and splash yourself until you're technically damp. Soap, a luxury. Shampoo, fantasy. Privacy, please. Half the village is also bathing nearby, including your cousin, to monks, and a man you swear is always watching. You bathe maybe once a week, depending on the weather, the workload, and whether or not your mother has noticed your stench has evolved into a separate organism. Most of the time, you get by with a damp cloth and an optimistic attitude. Smelling bad isn't a personal failing, it's just being alive. Everyone smells. The whole village is a symphony of sweat, livestock, and fermented things. You walk through the town and it's like navigating through a cloud of boiled cabbage and damp wool. But the real horror, the real social punishment, is being known as the one who fell into the pit latrine. It happens, especially at night. One misstep on the slippery planks, and you're face first in last week's digestives. There's no coming back from that. People will remember. The chickens will remember. The ancestors definitely remember. So next time you sigh at your clean porcelain throne with scented wipes and automatic flush, just remember, you could have been in Han Dynasty China, holding a sponge stick and praying it's not someone else's turn to wash it. Sweet dreams. ****. Welcome to your morning routine. Ancient China edition. There's no mirror, no scented soaps, number 10-step skincare. Just your tired face, a handful of cold water, and a vague hope that you won't offend the village with your smell before lunchtime. Let's start with dental hygiene. A phrase that sounds impressive until you realize it mostly involves chewing on a stick. Specifically, a frayed twig known as a YAZ. You rub it across your teeth with the precision of a blind raccoon, hoping it scrapes off enough grime to stop your gums from retreating like defeated soldiers. Toothpaste, not invented yet. Mouthwash, salt water, or vinegar, if you're feeling fancy. The vinegar burns, but at least it distracts from your breath, which currently smells like pickled onions and regret. Cavities, they happen, frequently. The solution, suffering. Your teeth are on a slow countdown to rot, but you accept this, where you accept everything else quietly, and with mild constipation. Next up, getting dressed, which is easy because you only own one outfit. Maybe two, if your family's doing well. It's a rough, itchy robe made of hemp or coarse cotton. It's been mended so many times, it looks like a patchwork quilt sewn by a blindfolded ghost. You've worn it every day for the last year. Never gets fully clean, just less dirty. Underwear exists, technically, but it's not guaranteed. Most days, you just go commando under your tunic and pray no one notices when the wind picks up. Socks, hilarious shoes. If you're lucky, Most peasants go barefoot, navigating a minefield of rocks, manure, and emotional disappointment. There's your hair, long, heavy, unwashed, and extremely important. In ancient China, hair isn't just hair. It's a symbol of morality, obedience, and how much your ancestors would shame you if you ever cut it. According to Confucian values, your hair is a gift from your parents. So naturally, you're required to keep it long and neat, or at least try. But neatness is relative. Your scalp is a battleground of lice, dandruff, and prayers. There's no shampoo, no conditioner, no detangler. You use cold water and maybe a handful of rice water if you're desperate and rich in carbohydrates. Men tie their hair into a top knot, usually with a scrap of cloth or a carved wooden stick. If you're a scholar, it's elegant. If you're a farmer, it's functional. If you're a child, your hair might be shaved into awkward patterns based on regional traditions or just your uncle getting bored with a knife. Women have it worse. You wake up with hair tangled like a haunted fishing net. You spend the next half hour trying to comb it into braids, buns, or coils, usually while someone's yelling at you to hurry up. If you're married, your hairstyle better show it. If you're single, it better not look too eager. If you mess it up, people assume you're sick, cursed, or going through something emotional like widowhood or minor possession. You stick a wooden pin through your hair, say a quiet prayer that it doesn't fall out midday, and move on. There's no time to look nice, only to look socially acceptable enough not to get called a wild animal. By now, the rooster is on round 2 of screaming. Your cousin is fighting with a goose, and someone spilled millet in the doorway again. Your robe smells like boiled cabbage. Your hair is stiff with last week's sweat, and your mouth tastes like salted hay. And just like that, you're ready to face the day. Not stylishly, not confidently, just clothed, mostly vertical, and marginally clean, which, by ancient China standards, makes you a morning success story. Asterisk, it's time for breakfast, or what ancient Chinese peasants more accurately called whatever's left in the pot from yesterday. Forget pancakes, eggs, or anything with flavor. This isn't brunch. This is damage control. Your morning meal is one thing, always: rice, usually watery, grey, and emotionally disappointing. Officially, it's called Joe, a thin rice porridge. That sounds better than it tastes. Think of it as soup. If soup was made out of despair, grain residue, and hot water that gave up halfway through cooking. If your family is lucky, the Joe has a few actual rice grains floating in it. If you're unlucky, it's just cloudy water with a hint of boiled ash and the distant memory of rice. This isn't a dish. It's liquid surrender, now. If it's a really good day, and by good we mean someone in the village didn't die overnight, you might find a few pickled vegetables on the side. Probably turnip, possibly cabbage, definitely saltier than your attitude. These pickles have been fermenting in a ceramic jar under your aunt's bed for the past 5 months. You eat them anyway. They're the only part of your breakfast has any actual crunch, unless you count the accidental grit in your porridge from unwashed rice husks. Which you do. Protein. What protein? Meat is a fantasy. Eggs are reserved for special occasions. Chickens are more valuable alive than cooked, because at least they scream if someone tries to steal them. You don't waste a chicken unless it's dead by accident or your family won a legal case, which happens approximately never. Oh, sweet child. No, tea is for nobles, scholars, the occasional monk with rich temple donors. You drink hot water because cold water might kill you, and boiling it is the poor man's purification system. Or maybe you have barley broth, warm beige, and about as satisfying as chewing a wet sock. You pretend it fills you. It doesn't. Yes, even the kids drink it. There is no juice box in ancient China. There is only the broth of sadness, served warm. You sit on the dirt floor, because chairs are for people with coin and dignity. Your back is already sore from sleeping on a mat stuffed with straw and regrets. You hold a wooden bowl that's been passed down through 3 generations and still has teeth marks from when your uncle bit it in his sleep. It's probably never been washed properly. You pretend not to care. And then there are the chopsticks. Asterisk elegant in theory, splintery in reality. Yours are made of old bamboo, split unevenly, and held together by a string because you snapped one last month trying to spear a radish chunk. They don't match. One is longer than the other. One has blood on it. But no one talks about that. Using chopsticks as a peasant is less about grace and more about desperation. You chase a wilted cabbage sliver around your bowl for 6 minutes before finally catching it on your tongue like a lizard. The rest of your breakfast disappears somewhere between your mouth and the dirt. You're still hungry. There are no seconds. There is no dessert. There is just the hope that lunch will be better. It won't, but you don't complain. Complaining is disrespectful. Instead, you chew in silence while your grandfather lectures you on how much worse his breakfasts were. He once ate bark for a month. You nod solemnly while fantasizing about biting him. And just like that, your first meal of the day is over. You're still tired, still itchy, still hungry, but you're fed, technically. And now it's time to go work in the fields until your spine begs for mercy. Welcome to morning in ancient China. It's time for work, which is a strong word for the slow-motion punishment. You endure every day until your body gives up and your spirit floats off into a rice-scented afterlife. You are a peasant farmer in ancient China. Your tools are wooden, your feet are bare, and your alarm clock is the rooster screaming at you to get up and ruin your spine. Again, by 6 a.m., you're already standing ankle-deep in mud, knee-deep in mosquitoes, and emotionally buried under the weight of generational disappointment. You've skipped breakfast, not because you wanted to, but because your cousin ate the last pickle. Again, you shuffle to the fields with a hoe, so old it might have seen a dynasty rise and fall. Your hands are already blistered from yesterday. Your back makes that click-pop-creak noise whenever you try to straighten up. But you stop noticing after the first 5 years. The rice paddy is your domain. It's also your enemy. It's wet, it's sticky. It smells like something died in it, which it probably did. You wade in slowly, feeling something slimy brush against your leg. Could be a fish, could be a ghost. You move on, you plant seedlings. One by one, bent at a 90-degree angle, in the sun, with bugs swarming your face like you're a buffet. After planting, you weed. After weeding, you harvest. After harvesting, you carry bundles the size of toddlers across terrain that laughs at the idea of flat ground. There is no machinery, just your body and the vaguely sharp stick father sharpened with a rock sometime during the Han Dynasty. You share this field with your entire family, several water buffalo, and one angry duck who seems personally offended by your existence. Tools are simple: a wooden rake, a hand sickle, a hoe. Occasionally, one of these tools is also used to discipline children, settle arguments, or threaten your lazy cousin into pulling his weight for once in his life. You don't get paid in money. No one pays you in silver taels or golden coins. You get paid in grain, most of which is immediately taken away by the government in the form of taxes. They don't knock politely. They show up with a ledger and a guy whose eyebrows scream, "I haven't smiled since the Han Dynasty." You give up a portion of your harvest, plus a portion of your soul, and they smile like they just did you a favor. If you don't pay, you're fined, punished, or conscripted into a labor project, like building another chunk of wall in the middle of nowhere. Either way, you're not winning. But hey, you've got dreams. You dream of retirement at 35. That's not a joke. That's life expectancy. By your mid-30s, your teeth are gone, your joints click when it rains, and your skin has taken on the texture of boiled leather. You fantasize about the day your children take over the field, and you can sit under a tree, drinking warm barley broth and shouting unsolicited advice. Until then, you keep digging and sweating and repeating the same back-breaking tasks every single day. There are no weekends, no holidays, unless you count the Mid-Autumn Festival, which mostly just means more chores in better clothing. And when the harvest fails, there's famine. And when there's famine, there's selling off your heirlooms, your livestock, and eventually your dignity, which, to be fair, wasn't doing great to begin with. So you bend over, push your hands into the dirt, and accept the truth. You don't have a job. You are the job. Now grab your hoe, and let's go, not die for another 12 hours. So, you're not a farmer. Congratulations. You've just sidestepped back-breaking fieldwork in favor of a different flavor of misery. Because in ancient China, your job title doesn't matter. The pain is universal. It just wears different hats. Let's start with the artisans, the hard-working backbone of skilled labor. Potters, weavers, blacksmiths, carpenters, basically. Anyone who works with their hands until their hands give up and start screaming in tendinitis. These folks create things, beautiful things, necessary things, things that will eventually be taxed, stolen, or broken by someone's bratty nephew. They work in open-air sheds with zero ventilation, using tools that look like torture devices, because sometimes they are. No gloves, no goggles, just raw talent and a high tolerance for burns, cuts, and at one time the bellows caught on fire. Again, the pay. Not much. Artisans are technically more respected than merchants, but less than animals during festival season. Your job might get passed down to your kid, who will also inhale toxic fumes from lacquer or smash their thumb with a hammer, just like you did. A beautiful family tradition. Now, let's talk merchants. Yes. The capitalists of ancient China. You sell goods. You move grain. You count coins in back rooms and haggle like your life depends on it, because it does. You might even be rich, own a cart, a warehouse, maybe even 2 robes. But here's the catch. Everyone hates you. Confucian values rank. Merchants below, farmers on the social scale. Why? Because you don't produce anything. You just profit off other people's labor, which makes you, in the eyes of polite society, a well-dressed parasite. You can't hold office. You can't marry into a decent family. You can't even show off your wealth too much without the local magistrate suddenly remembering you owe taxes. Lots of taxes. And yes, sometimes the government just takes your stuff because you're a merchant and no one cares. Next up, government officials. You studied. You passed the exam. You memorized Confucius until your brain liquefied. Now you wear a silk robe and sit behind a scroll-covered desk, handing out permits and pretending your ink-stained life is meaningful. The job is deceptively glamorous. You write with a brush, you issue orders, you sip tea, but also you live in a constant fog of paperwork, corruption, and existential dread. The bureaucracy is endless. Want to approve a grain shipment? Fill out Form 37B and get 3 red seals from people who hate you. Need to resolve a land dispute? Prepare for 6 months of angry peasants yelling at you while your hair turns grey. Also, if you're not corrupt, you're poor. And if you are corrupt, you're rich, but constantly terrified someone will report you and have you exiled to a province filled with wolves and awkward poetry recitals. And finally, let's salute the soldiers. They wear armor, they carry spears. They stand on the Great Wall and stare into the cold, endless wilderness, waiting for an enemy that may or may not exist. Half the time, they're just guarding from wind, rumors, and bored nomads with better horses. Training is minimal. Pay is laughable. Meals are rice if you're lucky, boiled millet if you're not, and nothing if your commander lost the supply money gambling. You sleep in a tent that leaks, wear shoes made of regret, and occasionally get to stab someone. But mostly, you just stand still while developing trench foot and thinking about your childhood. No matter your role, artisan, merchant, official, soldier, life in ancient China is not a career path. It's a slow-motion endurance test, disguised as productivity. So pick your profession, tighten your sash, and remember, in ancient China, everyone's working and no one's really winning. If you're a woman in ancient China, congratulations, your day starts earlier, ends later, and is somehow more exhausting than everyone else's combined. You're not just pulling your own weight, you're also carrying the mental, emotional, and sometimes literal weight of your entire household, a rice sack, and 3 screaming children. Sunrise, you're already up while the men grunt their way out of straw mats and complain about ghosts or taxes. You've been awake for at least an hour, stoking the fire, hauling water, and trying to cook breakfast with 2 ingredients and a prayer. You prepare meals, even though the pantry is empty, the grain mill is broken, and your youngest child just threw up something suspiciously worm-shaped. Then it's time to grind grain by hand, using a stone mill that weighs more than your in-laws' expectations. Your arms are permanently sore. Your wrists crack when you knead dough. Your fingers are calloused from years of cooking, weaving, sewing, cleaning, spinning, and scrubbing. But sure, someone else still calls you lazy. And here's the thing. You do all of this while barely being allowed to speak. Your life is a carefully rehearsed performance of obedience, silence, and not making eye contact with your father-in-law. If you do everything right, no one notices. If you speak out of turn, they definitely do. You have no voice, no property, and no decision-making power. But hey, your embroidery skills are coming along nicely now. Before you think being a woman in ancient China is just housework, spoiler. It's not just anything. Let's talk about your social role. It's all based on Confucian hierarchy, which means you're ranked below men, elders, and probably most livestock. You're expected to be chaste, modest, humble, and above all, useful. Your body is not your own, it's a conveyor belt for heirs, and the longer you go without producing a son, the louder the sighs get at dinner. Marriage. That happens young, very young. As in, you're still losing your baby teeth, but here comes the wedding procession, young. You're traded between families like a fragile, underfed chess piece. Your opinion on the matter doesn't count, because opinions are for men. And you're still mastering how to smile without showing teeth. Once married, your job expands. You now must serve your husband, obey your mother-in-law, manage the household, and raise children, ideally boys, because daughters are considered charming disappointments. Sons earn praise. Daughters get married off to strangers and sometimes blamed for rain. Foot binding, not yet. You're lucky, kind of. That particular nightmare starts later, during the Song Dynasty. For now, your feet remain painfully functional, which is good, because you're expected to walk to the river, carry bundles of wood, and climb hills with a baby strapped to your back. There are no days off, no me time, no spa days or tea parties, unless you're born into extreme wealth. And even then, you're still judged by how quietly you suffer. Any dreams you had of learning to read, writing poetry, or practicing music, stuff those down under the floor mat with your dignity and hopes. By your mid-30s, if you're still alive, you're a grandmother. Maybe missing teeth, maybe missing your original hair color, but definitely not missing the workload, because it never went away. So here you are, a daughter, a wife, a mother, a ghost with a chore list. And still, when dinner is served, you're the last to eat. Because, in ancient China, being a woman means doing everything while being treated like you do nothing. Asterisk, welcome to childhood in ancient China, or what passes for it. There are no birthday parties, no plush toys, no cartoon mascots. Your life begins with a vague cry and immediately transitions into a lifelong apprenticeship. In doing what you're told, you are small, confused, and already in trouble. If you're lucky, you're born into a family that actually wanted a child. If you're really lucky, you're a boy. If not, well, hope you're good at disappearing quietly into corners. Let's talk education, or the lack of it. If you are a boy from a wealthy family, congratulations, you get to go to school. Or rather, you get to sit in a cold room while an underpaid scholar whacks your knuckles with a bamboo stick every time you forget a Confucian quote. You'll memorize the analects, recite poems you don't understand, and write characters until your fingers resemble tree roots. It's less learning and more emotional endurance training with ink. And if you're a girl, no school for you. Education is for boys, headaches are for girls. You'll stay home, learn how to grind grain, fold laundry, and be silent in multiple emotional registers. If you're a peasant child, education is just a rumor you've heard about once from a passing monk. Your classroom is the backyard, your teacher is your mother, and your curriculum is do what I do and don't ask questions. By the age of 5, you're already contributing to the family economy. How? By gathering sticks, fetching water, and being in the way slightly less than usual. There is no such thing as too young to work. If you can walk, you can carry something. If you can't walk yet, you ride on someone's back while they work. Your toys are rocks, mud, and the occasional dead bug you poke with a stick. If you're feeling creative, you and your siblings might play a game called Who Can Chase the Chicken without falling face first into dung. Spoiler, it's always you. Your idea of fun is stealing sips of warm barley broth when no one's looking, or laughing at your cousin getting chased by the angry duck that lives under the granary. These are the highlights. Savor them. Discipline is frequent and non-negotiable. Disobey your father. Get shouted into the next dynasty. Break a bowl. That's a beating with the spoon you broke it with. Talk back to your grandfather. Hope you enjoy. Being invisible for the next week. The family hierarchy is strict. You are at the bottom, below your older siblings, below the dog. You don't speak unless spoken to, and even then, it's safest not to speak. Dreams. Sure, You dream of maybe becoming a scribe, if you're clever, literate, and born into a family with connections. That means less mud, more ink, and hopefully fewer parasites. If you're not clever, or your family's poor, back to the rice. Paddy as you go. There is no such thing as adolescence. One day, you're a child. The next day, you're working like an adult, with half the strength and none of the say-so. So here's the summary. No rights, no toys, no privacy, no bedtime stories, just chores, judgment, and the constant background fear of being yelled at for something your older brother definitely did. In ancient China, childhood is not a golden age. It's just the tutorial level for a game, where the difficulty only goes up and the save points are imaginary. Asterisk, feeling a bit under the weather in ancient China. Maybe your joints ache, your head feels like it's full of boiling rice water, or you've developed a mysterious rash shaped like your cousin's cooking pot. Either way, congratulations, you're about to experience ancient Chinese medicine. Spoiler, it's not as glamorous as modern wellness blogs make it sound. There are no spa robes, no calming music, no scented candles, just a doctor, a wooden box full of herbs, and a vague belief that your spleen controls your mood. Step 1. Diagnosis. A traditional physician will take your pulse, look at your tongue, maybe sniff you seriously, and conclude that your qi is unbalanced. Your yin and yang are having a domestic dispute, and your liver is angry for reasons unclear to everyone, including the liver. They might say your wind is trapped. This is not a euphemism. They mean literal evil wind, which has snuck into your body through your skin and is now doing donuts in your intestines. How do you get rid of it? Cupping, scraping, burning mugwort near your armpits, or drinking something that tastes like a swamp's last regret. Step 2. Herbal remedies. Time to boil a soup made from scorpion tail, dried centipede, and 4 pieces of bark your uncle swore by before he died suspiciously early. You'll choke it down while a nearby child pretends not to watch you suffer. Bonus points if you vomit. That means it's working. If herbs fail, you may be prescribed acupuncture. A brilliant concept, if not always accurately applied. Early acupuncturists were basically human pincushion enthusiasts who believed sticking needles into your feet could heal your lungs, your thoughts, and your broken marriage. It works, sometimes, but when it doesn't, you just end up looking like a hedgehog in emotional distress. Feeling brave? Let's talk surgery. No anesthetic, no sterilization. Just a guy with a rusty blade, a bottle of rice wine, and the confidence of someone who once read half a scroll about spleens. He'll yell for someone to hold you down while he slices open the offending limb and chants something about your ancestors. Did it work? Hard to say. You're either cured, unconscious, or ascending to the spirit world at high speed. For women, things are even worse. Pregnancy is less of a miracle and more of a death lottery. Midwives do their best, but tools are primitive. And knowledge is, shall we say, folk-based. A difficult birth might involve prayers, pressure points, and someone banging pots in the next room to scare away bad spirits. Epidurals, not a thing. Screaming, very much a thing. Infections are the real killer. One wrong cut, one dirty bandage, one splinter, and you're suddenly watching your toe swell into a small purple god of vengeance. Antibiotics don't exist. The best you can hope for is boiled water, a poultice of crushed beetles, and someone whispering, maybe it's not that bad as your leg turns black, and if you die, which you probably will, There's at least a system for that. Your family burns incense, arranges a funeral assuming they can afford it, and tries not to mention that you died from bad qi and a splinter dot in the end. Ancient Chinese medicine is a mix of wisdom, superstition, and mild panic. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it really doesn't. But either way, you get a story, a bruise, and a very real understanding that in this era, healthcare is just hopeful guessing with herbs. Asterisk, the sun is high. Your back is sore. You've spent the last 6 hours ankle-deep in mud or bent over a loom, or possibly being yelled at for having the audacity to exist with a face. And now, finally, it's time for lunch, a word that might conjure visions of rest and nourishment if you were born in a different century and had slightly more rights. Here, in ancient China, lunch is just breakfast in a different emotional state. You don't sit down for a meal. You crouch in a dirt patch that vaguely resembles a yard. The sun's in your eyes. Your neighbor's goat is trying to eat your sleeve. And your younger cousin is already licking the spoon you just used. It's lunchtime, all right. So what's on the menu? Rice again, and not the good kind. Not the fluffy, steaming, served in a porcelain bowl next to lacquered duck kind. This is gritty, undercooked, slightly burnt, maybe dropped once, and probably shared with 3 other people. It comes in a wooden bowl, or a clay one if someone didn't drop it last week. You eat with bamboo chopsticks, which were once a nice set but are now cracked, splintered, and suspiciously sticky. And no, you don't get a new pair. You use them until they disintegrate or give you tetanus, whichever comes first. Now, if fate is feeling generous and your family didn't lose a bet with the weather, there might be extras. Don't get excited. Extras mean a chunk of tofu, which tastes like wet chalk, but hey, protein. Some wild greens, lovingly foraged from the ditch by the road and washed just enough that you probably won't get a parasite, or fermented turnip, which is either a side dish or a dare. Smells like failure, tastes like sadness, but it's tangy. And that's something. As for meat, you remember meat, right? That's the stuff you smelled during New Year last spring, when your cousin's neighbor's uncle sacrificed a pig and forgot to share. Meat is a festival food, or a survival accident, meaning a duck flew too low and caught a rock to the face, a squirrel made a bad decision near your rice basket, or someone's chicken just stopped moving. And no one asks too many questions. When meat does appear, it's a tiny slice, more bone than substance, boiled into soup until it's more of a theoretical flavor than a meal. You chew it very slowly, not to enjoy it, but to make it last long enough to remember it happened. Dinner, it's the revenge of lunch. Same rice, maybe a thinner gruel version, because the good stuff was already eaten or stepped on. Your body is screaming for nutrients. Your stomach is sighing, and your mouth is full of hot, bland, overcooked resilience. The atmosphere is muted. Nobody's chatting, nobody's smiling. Your father is thinking about taxes. Your mother is already planning tomorrow's chores. You, meanwhile, are trying to ignore the mosquito biting your ankle and focus on not inhaling a piece of twig that's somehow in your food again. No dessert, no leftovers. No, would you like seconds? You finish what's in your bowl, lick it clean if you're ambitious, and hand it back to be scrubbed with cold water and scolding by the end of the day. You've eaten 3 versions of the same meal, none of which made you full, but all of which made you functional enough to keep suffering. Because, in ancient China, variety is for nobles. and you're just a background character in a historical drama called Perpetual Hunger, the musical now. Get some rest. You've got rice to eat again tomorrow. Asterisk. So you've survived another back-breaking day in ancient China. You're sore, underfed, and emotionally crumbling like your village's mud brick walls. But guess what? You've earned the right to not work for an hour or two. That's right, it's time for entertainment. Or, as it's locally known, mild distraction from crushing reality. Let's start with the wholesome stuff. Storytelling is a big deal. There's no Netflix, no radio, not even a whisper of TikTok. Your content comes from the old guy with no teeth who sits by the well and recounts tales of ancient warriors, mischievous fox spirits, and government officials who were almost honest. Half the stories are made up. The other half are also made up, just with more confidence. Then there's shadow puppetry, basically ancient China's version of animation. A traveling performer shows up with a backlit screen, a few carved leather puppets, and a dramatic voice. Children gather. Adults pretend not to be interested while edging closer. The stories involve dragons, bandits, and occasionally talking frogs with political opinions. It's delightful, confusing, and a welcome break from watching rice boil. Music. Yes, there's music. If someone owns a flute, a drum, or anything that rattles, you're in for a performance. The tunes are high-pitched, meandering, and occasionally interrupted by goats. But hey, it beats listening to your cousin snore through his nose. If you live in a village, your options are limited to who's nearby and not currently working. If you live in a town or city, things get a little more exciting. You might visit a market where you can see everything from live chickens to counterfeit coins to a man eating nails for tips. There's haggling, shouting, and the constant risk of being pickpocketed by a 9-year-old in a clever hat. Tea houses are where the slightly richer folks go to pretend they're sophisticated. You sit, sip hot leaf water, and pretend not to eavesdrop on the merchant behind you arguing about salt prices. For many people, this is the social highlight of the month. For peasants, you're just hoping someone brings leftover tea dregs home. Festivals are the real Local holidays mean food, decorations, and someone inevitably setting fire to something for tradition. Fireworks haven't been invented yet, but there might be firecrackers, loud, smoky, and the number one cause of ancient chaos. People dress up, dance badly, and forget briefly how miserable they are the rest of the year. But not all ancient fun is G-rated. Drinking is popular, probably too popular. You drink millet wine or some home-brewed horror made from fermented whatever was slinged around. It tastes like sadness with a vinegar chaser, but it gets the job done. Once tipsy, people laugh louder, lie more confidently, and start gambling. Gambling involves dice, cards, and occasionally fistfights. You might win a chicken, you might lose your only tunic. Either way, it's entertainment, and you'll definitely have something new to be yelled at for later. For the true thrill seekers, there's cockfighting. You stand in a circle with 20 other people, yelling at birds to peck each other into submission. It's barbaric, yes, but also weirdly popular. If you've never cheered for a rooster with a grudge, are you even living? And finally, gossip. The ultimate ancient pastime. No phones, no internet, just humans doing what they've always done best, speculating wildly about their neighbors. Someone's daughter is pregnant. Someone else's pig has disappeared. The local magistrate has a suspicious new hat. This is Twitter in slow motion, fueled by rice wine and pure judgment. So yes, Life in ancient China is hard, but humans will always find ways to distract themselves. Even if it's just a puppet show, a flute solo, or watching a chicken win a fight. Asterisk, you've survived another day without falling into a rice paddy or choking on a turnip. Good job, but don't relax yet, because even when your neighbors aren't watching you, the ancestors are. So are the spirits, the ghosts, the gods, and probably that weird rock behind your house that someone swears is haunted. Welcome to religion and superstition in ancient China, where reality is confusing, the afterlife is crowded, and your moral compass is constantly being recalibrated by people who died centuries ago. Let's begin with the ancestors, your forever roommates. They may be dead, but they still have opinions and needs, and a terrifying amount of emotional leverage. Every morning, or whenever you remember, you light some incense, bow deeply, and offer them a bit of food. Not because you're generous, but because you're terrified they'll curse your crops if you forget. Yes, your entire rice harvest might depend on whether or not you remembered to give Grandpa half a stale dumpling. Did the ancestor even like dumplings? In life, doesn't matter. You give them what you can. Paper money burned for spiritual use. Tea, maybe a chicken bone, and a side dish of unrelenting guilt. Because if anything goes wrong, your pig dies, your roof leaks, your child develops a mysterious rash, it's probably because someone in your bloodline feels disrespected. Now, if the ancestors weren't enough, ghosts are also a daily concern. Ghosts are like ancestors, but angrier and less predictable. They're what happens when someone dies unhappily, unnaturally, or without the proper paperwork. Did your great-uncle drown during a flood and no one found his body? Congratulations! You now have a vengeful river ghost. Expect broken tools, cold winds, and mysterious coughing sounds at night. To protect yourself, you follow rituals. You hang talismans, avoid whistling after dark, and never, under any circumstances, point at the moon. No one knows exactly why pointing at the moon is bad, but it's definitely extremely bad, and you don't want to find out what happens. Now, let's talk philosophy, the ancient equivalent of self-help books, but with more bowing. Confucianism is the big boss in your household. It dictates your behavior, your place in the family, and your level of internalized repression. According to Confucius, your role in life is to obey your parents, respect your elders, and shut your mouth unless spoken to. Feelings, optional. Filial piety, non-negotiable. Your father is the law, your grandfather is the constitution, and your opinion is just a rumor. Then there's Taoism, which handles all the things Confucianism doesn't like talking about, like immortality, magic, and the possibility that trees have feelings. Taoism teaches you to go with the flow, which is helpful when the flow includes plagues, taxes, and unexplained chicken deaths. If you see a rock shaped like a turtle, that's probably a sign of what? No one knows. But it's definitely a sign. And finally, there's Buddhism, the imported spiritual coping mechanism. Buddhism gently reminds you that life is suffering. But don't worry, if you endure enough of it, you might get reborn as something slightly less miserable, like a merchant or a better-fed ghost. You go to temples, spin prayer wheels, chant sutras, and hope for good karma while chewing boiled millet with existential dread. In summary, you're surrounded, all the time, by watchful ancestors, judgmental spirits, ghosts with grudges, and Confucian expectations you'll never fully live up to. Also, a chicken that might be possessed. There is no privacy, not even in your mind. So remember, whether you're sneaking a second bowl of rice or muttering rude things about your uncle, the sky is watching. The sun finally sets. Not that you noticed it rise. Your day started in the dark and ends in the dark. And in between you mostly just blinked through sweat. But now it's evening, and you'd think this might be a time to rest. You would be wrong. Nighttime in ancient China is not cozy. It's not peaceful. It's just the third act of the same tragic play where you sweat, scratch, and stare into darkness while trying not to cry too loudly. After your emotionally barren dinner of rice and pickled disappointment, you don't lie down and sigh with contentment. You keep working. There's weaving to do, or mending, or grinding grain for tomorrow's gruel. You might be peeling vegetables by moonlight, or sewing by the dying flicker of an oil lamp. Candlelight, not likely. Candles are expensive. You use oil lamps made from clay, filled with something vaguely flammable that smells like sorrow. The flame is weak, smoky, and utterly committed to going out the second you sneeze. If you're lucky, there's moonlight. If you're not, it's just pitch black. And you've stubbed your toe twice on the same stool and started an argument with your cousin because someone moved the water jar again. And yes, fires are a constant threat. Your house is made of wood, straw, and regret. One spark and your entire home goes up like it's starring in a cautionary folktale. You go to sleep knowing that a gust of wind, a tipped lamp, or your uncle's breath while snoring could burn the place down. So eventually, when you've finished all the night chores and the fire's been reduced to a smoldering whisper, you lie down to rest, not in a bed. That's funny. You sleep on a straw mat, maybe with a blanket if the rats didn't chew through it. Your pillow is a bundle of clothes, or just your arm. If you're lucky, you get a corner to yourself. If not, you're sharing a sleep space with 5 relatives, a baby, 2 chickens, and a dog that might also be your cousin's child's best friend. Privacy. Forget it. You can literally hear 3 people breathing, and at least one of them has a wheeze that sounds like a haunted flute. Oh, and the fleas. Did you think they were taking the night off? No, they are thriving. You scratch your leg, then your neck. Then wonder if the crawling feeling is real or just psychological. Spoiler, it's both. If it's summer, you're sweating into your straw mat, stuck to your own skin, praying for a breeze that never comes. If it's winter, your fingers go numb while you pretend that a slightly warmer chicken is a form of heating. Rain, that's just water entering your home from every direction. You press your face against the driest patch of wall and pretend you're a rock. Oh. And let's not forget the bandits. They're out there. Probably you're not important enough to rob. But that doesn't stop your grandmother from muttering about them every night like they're old friends and ghosts and fox spirits, and that weird noise in the rafters that might be a squirrel, a demon, or your cousin snoring upside down again. Eventually, you drift off to sleep, not because you're comfortable, but because your body has given up. You sleep hard because tomorrow brings more rice, more mud, more yelling, and not enough. Breakfast, welcome to bedtime in ancient China. Sleep tight. Try not to get cursed. Asterisk, well, look at you. You made it. Somehow, you clawed, limped, and rice shuffled your way through an entire day in ancient China without collapsing into a pit, latrine, or being trampled by a water buffalo. Let's recap what you endured, just to really drive it home. You woke up itchy, cold, and confused in a straw-scented box with more insects than furniture. You washed your face with hope and brushed your teeth with a twig. You ate sadness in a bowl, then spent the entire day working so hard your ancestors probably felt it. You socialized by listening to a flute made of mild trauma, avoided ghosts, and did chores by a flame that looked like it owed you money. You went to sleep covered in flea bites, under a roof that leaks philosophy and mildew. And now, as the oil lamp flickers for the last time, you lie there staring into the dark, wondering if that scratching sound is the rat again, or just your cousin trying to find his blanket, which you are currently using, and your reward for making it through all that. Doing it again tomorrow. That's the reality of ancient life for 90% of people in 120 BCE. Not battlefields or dynastic intrigue. Just surviving, just scraping by, just making it to the next sunrise without losing a toe to frostbite, a grain, sack to taxes, or your sanity to lice. And don't get romantic about it. Yes, there's beauty in tradition. Yes, family bonds are strong, but so is the smell of your shared latrine. History isn't always glorious. Sometimes it's just a long, damp endurance test with extra chores and fewer bathrooms. But you did it. You were obedient. You didn't offend the ancestors. You didn't get possessed by a fox spirit or eaten by a bandit. You ate, worked, scratched, and bowed your way to survival, which, in ancient China, is kind of the definition of success. Now, as you curl up on your straw mat, with your only shirt doubling as a blanket, and your left arm slowly falling asleep under someone else's leg, you finally let your eyes close. Outside, a dog barks, a mosquito hums in your ear, a ghost politely knocks on the ancestral altar, and the moon watches silently through a hole in the roof. Sleep well and be glad. You don't live in 120 BCE.